All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to all of our new users, and welcome back to our returning users. Before we dive in, there are some housekeeping notes. You are muted, your video is off, and this will be the case for the remainder of the webinar. At the right side of your screen, you will see a few different icons. I'm also circling them with my mouse. There's the poll icon. I do ask, if you haven't done so yet, please take a moment to interact with our poll question. You will also see the chat icon. If you haven't done so yet, please take a moment and introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know the city and state that you're joining us from, and the grade bands that you work with. Kenyatta, welcome back, Kenyatta. You were with us last week. It's so good to see you again. On the right side of the screen, you will also see the Ask a Question icon. So during the webinar, the chat is moving really quickly. And so if you have any questions, we don't want to miss them. So it's a lot easier for us to locate your questions when you use the Ask a Question button. On the bottom of the screen, you'll see a button, a green button that says Resources. I'll be referring to this button quite a bit throughout this presentation. When you click that link, you will find a page with a copy of your certificate, even a copy of the slides that we're using for today's session, and some really helpful links for you to learn more about our resources. Finally, this webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a copy of it along with a PD certificate at the email address that you use to register for today's webinar. This is the first part of the Science of Reading Beyond Phonics webinar series. So today we will be focusing on building background knowledge. That's why the webinar is called The Power of Knowing. And we'll tell you about some ReadWorks products that will support your work with building background knowledge. We'll take a moment to introduce ourselves. I'm Tamika Reese. I'm the Educator Support Project Manager at ReadWorks. I've been in this role for about a year and a half, but before joining ReadWorks, I was an elementary school teacher. I taught grades 1 to 4, and I used ReadWorks in my classroom.
And I am Dr. Tamora McConnell. I'm an educator in Jackson, Mississippi, where I support students in kindergarten through 5th grade. And I am entering my 14th year in education, and I am a member of the Educator Advisory Council.
My name is Dr. Wesley Ruth. I am a library media specialist and educator in Manchester, Kentucky. We're in the southeast part of the state. I'm also a member of the ReadWorks Educator Advisory Council, and it's good to see everybody. So, as Tamika said, this is our ReadWorks. Got a lot of great knowledge to share with you guys today. Here's our agenda, and you can sort of look at the bullets there and sort of follow along. We're going to tell you a little bit about ReadWorks. We are a unique organization in the EdTech space. And then we're going to talk about the main reasons that we have to offer here that we can help support your students in the right way, especially when it comes to reading and literacy. And after that, we're going to cover how to show you how to make your own free account. If you don't have one, again, it is free, and we will make and take time to address your questions. And I'm going to go ahead and Tamika had mentioned the poll question, and it was just asking if you have ever read or have you ever used the ReadWorks teacher guide before. We've got about 30% say yes, no is at 13%, and then about 57% say they are not familiar with the teacher guide at all. So
that's really helpful. Thank you so much to everyone who's answered the poll question. In our agenda, we show you that we'll be doing a demo. So I'm going to definitely take some time to point out how to locate the teacher guide, since most of you aren't familiar with it, and it's a very helpful resource. So let's talk about ReadWorks. Who are we? We are an EdTech nonprofit organization, and what we provide is free. It's always been free. Our hope is that you share this broadly. We want all teachers to have access to all that we have to offer. And like I said, it's free. It's always going to be free. We do not use paywalls. We will never use paywalls. And we focus on two goals. We help students grow their background knowledge and vocabulary while engaging in effective reading practice. So through reading, they're gaining powerful background knowledge and vocabulary that supports them to become better readers. So it's a really powerful cycle of practice. As for the resources that we provide, we have an ever-growing library of thousands of high quality and diverse nonfiction and fiction passages. We also offer vocabulary supports and activities. This would be a great time to mention tomorrow's live webinar. The second part of our Science of Reading series will focus on building vocabulary. So if you have not registered yet, it's not too late. We also offer text-dependent question sets. We have decodable text aligned to Foundation K-2. We recently launched the second grade decodables. We also offer curriculum alignments and connections, including the Next Generation Science Standards, Amplify CKLA, and a special Florida edition for all of you folks in Florida. We also have alignments with EL Education, Fish Tank, and Wit and Wisdom. We have brand new Spanish-English paired texts. We have book studies that you will be learning more about. Differentiation features to personalize for each of your students, including audio, step reads, ebooks, and finally, teacher guidance. Before I go on to the next slide, if there's any product that is listed here that you are curious about, there is a webinar for it. So make sure you check out readworks.org/webinars. You'll see the full calendar for the school year of all the webinars we've got planned. And I do hope to see you again soon. Taking a deeper look, I want you to know that ReadWorks products are research backed. So what this means is that they build on existing best practices in the classroom for students to learn to read, and they also research their impact and to constantly improve products. Frequent ReadWorks use drives positive reading outcomes. This is why we exist. Our digital differentiation tools have been shown to empower students to confidently and successfully tackle challenging reading. They are willing to take on that challenge and have shown more success. And finally, ReadWorks' positive impact persists across all socioeconomic subgroups. Gloria Ladson-Billings coined the term education debt to describe the cumulative impact of fewer resources in underserved communities. So this is at the heart of why ReadWorks products are free and why they will continue to be free. It's very important to us that everyone has access.
So as more states in the United States begin to pass legislation to require districts to provide evidence-based literacy instruction, here at ReadWorks, we want to let you know that we've always been committed to creating and providing products that are aligned with the science of reading. And here you can see on the screen in front of you are the pillars of reading comprehension that help guide our work. And we provide resources that help build background knowledge, grow vocabulary, strengthen that strategic reading, all of which are major components in the process of reading comprehension. And while ReadWorks is not a curriculum, and I can speak proudly from it as a teacher using the product, this product can be supplemented with any curriculum that you and your district are using. The resources we provide support both strands of the reading rope, language comprehension and word recognition. The science shows us that the threads in the language comprehension strand become the biggest contributors to students' comprehension as they become more automatic with word reading skills and challenging text. ReadWorks passages both complement and build on this growth to support these leading predictors of reading comprehension. And the science that we're seeing so much more is that students are benefiting from direct explicit, and systematic phonics instruction. ReadWorks has built decodables resources for teachers to use as supplements to a strong phonics curriculum. The science also shows that students need to build background knowledge and vocabulary while practicing applying their decoding skills. So, in other words, it's never too early and it's never too late to continue to build that knowledge and vocabulary. If we omit this knowledge building, especially at an early age, students are behind when they become increasingly automatic with their word recognition skills and move to new stages of comprehension. We provide support for decoding practice and early knowledge building through our content-rich nonfiction decodables paired with our listening level text on the same topic.
Thank you, Wesley. Before I continue on, just to build off of what you mentioned about the decodables, part 3 of this series will talk about decodables. That's on Thursday. I hope you're registered.
Okay, so let's look at the impact of background knowledge. I am pretty sure that you all are familiar with the baseball study by Rick and Leslie that happened in the best year in history, 1988. So this study has been replicated over the years with different subject areas, but with the initial study, they split students into 4 groups that you can see right here on the screen. And based on testing in the classroom, students were split into 2 groups at first, the high reading ability and the low reading ability groups. Next, students were split into groups based on their knowledge of baseball. So a high knowledge of baseball and a low knowledge of baseball. So the participants were asked to read a text about baseball, then their comprehension of the text was assessed afterwards. So before we show you the results, I want you to think about each of these groups and how they perform. And now in the chat, I want you to type the color of the group that you think performed the best.
And second best. So we'll give you a moment to get your responses ready in the chat. Which 2 groups do you think performed the best on that reading comprehension assessment? Which colors? Seeing a lot of folks say yellow and orange. All right.
Okay, so no surprise, the yellow group, which had a high reading ability and a high knowledge of baseball, they did the best. What was most surprising in this study was that the orange group, which had a low reading ability plus a high knowledge of baseball, they outperformed the other groups, including the group that had high reading ability with a low knowledge of baseball. And the orange group is not that far behind the yellow group in performance. So with this knowledge that we have gained from the study and many others like it, we have to think about the level of knowledge that readers are bringing with them when they are reading a new text and how this knowledge is going to support their reading. So let's discuss the biggest takeaways from this study.
So the biggest takeaway is that all comprehension relies on background knowledge. All comprehension is not background knowledge, but in order to activate those reading strategies that we all use as readers, we have to have an entry point into the text. Having background knowledge gives us that entry point. If we can't even begin to understand the words or the subject, then we can't predict, monitor comprehension, or make inferences. So let's take a look at the data. Knowledge is greater than reading skills. A lack of knowledge can negate our ability to use our reading skills. Natalie Wexler said whether or not readers understand a text depends far more on how much background knowledge and vocabulary they have relating to the topic than on how much they've practiced comprehension skills. More knowledge equals more comprehension. As we build our knowledge, our comprehension is strengthened. Again, Natalie Wexler said those students with the broadest knowledge have the best chance of demonstrating their comprehension. So ReadWorks supplements curricula to help you broaden that knowledge base and support your students' reading comprehension. knowledge equals even more knowledge. This means that the more you know, the easier it will be for you to learn new things. So, for example, if you know a little bit about birds, you know they have wings, then you read about them flying. That will give you more context about other animals. So other animals can't fly because they don't have wings. You build that scaffold of knowledge. So we have this evidence that background knowledge matters. So how do we apply that in the classroom? And that brings us to the value of article sets. Research shows that reading sets of texts that are conceptually or thematically related can be particularly beneficial for building background knowledge. And this is the foundation for Article a Day. The text sets are helpful because as knowledge is built over time, students can understand more and more challenging texts. The weekly Article a Day set consists of 5 nonfiction passages, all related. Well, 6 nonfiction passages, all related to one topic. And every day, as students read an article, they are building background knowledge over time. And as they move through the week, they have access to the texts and can read more challenging texts on that topic, further increasing their comprehension skills. So for early readers, for below grade level readers, we do include the option of listening to the article. So kindergarten and first grade Article a Day texts are written at a kindergarten and first grade listening level, and then second grade and beyond written at a second grade level and beyond. So, okay. So students are also gaining knowledge and they're exposed to more vocabulary, key vocabulary. And readers are more likely to encounter words that are key to understanding a topic multiple times. They aren't simply reading a word once and then moving on to another subject. They get to see it again. They get to see related words and synonyms. And research shows that this drives vocabulary more deeply, making the vocabulary words more sticky for the reader, becoming part of their memory and part of their expressive vocabulary, not just receptive. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Article a Day on the ReadWorks website. It's a fast supplement and students are able to build background knowledge while reading. So I'd like to start off by saying, as a former teacher who used Article a Day in the classroom, this is a routine that fosters a lot of joy and curiosity. And I think this image perfectly captures the way a lot of students feel about this resource. We know that as students feel more successful as readers, they are more likely to read more. And this ties perfectly to our mission of creating successful and joyful readers. So when used with fidelity, so that's daily for at least 15 weeks, Article a Day provides students with an opportunity to talk and write about what they've learned, how it connects to the world around them, and it builds confidence. And they become experts in what they're learning and reading. It's a 10-minute daily routine that once you get it up and running, it will take some time in the beginning of the school year, especially with younger grades, to set up that routine. And the text sets are hand curated. Students, record what they learn. So that brings the reading and writing together. And, you can have discussions or give them time to talk to each other about what they've read. So tying in that speaking element. So let's take a look at the research that we've done on Article a Day. Students showed a 4.7 point or 15% year-over-year gain in ELA test scores across 9 pilot schools. Students increased the length of their book of knowledge entries and their use of tier 2 and 3 vocabulary in a North Carolina pilot study. In just 10 minutes a day, third graders read an additional 49,500 words in a school year. And Michelle shared, my fourth graders have gained so much background knowledge about a wide variety of topics using Article a Day. And Ramona shared, students were more engaged and motivated to read due to the high interest articles. I began to see excitement about reading. So now I'm going to log into the ReadWorks website, but as a student. So I want you to see what your students will see when you assign article a day to them. You'll notice that I'm looking away from the camera. I'm just looking at a second screen. Okay. So here we see the article a day set that was assigned to this student. You'll also notice that you see multiple passages here. You can choose whether or not your students are reading, one article at a time, like all together, or we also give the option of student choice. So they can choose which ones to start with. Student choice is another way to get your readers more engaged and excited. You'll also see that I've included boost articles and challenge articles. So a boost article with this apple icon means that these passages are connected to the topic, but they're written one grade level below. And the challenge articles with the lightning bolt icon, those are written at one grade level above. So this is a really great example of how you can differentiate to support your students who are reading below grade level and above grade level. So now I'm going to click on one of the passages here. And I've also included audio. This is another great way for you to support below grade level readers, English language learners, pre-fluent readers. They can listen to the passage while, reading the passage. There's some other accessibility features on top, like expanding for a distraction-free view. They can also increase their text size. So this is medium, large, and extra large. You can show paragraph numbers. You can include the guided reading strip. And then there's also the split screen option. So like I mentioned before, there's a book of knowledge component. So students, once they read the passage, they can also write about what they've learned. And so you can split the screen so that they're able to see the passage and enter their book of knowledge entry. You'll also notice that there are vocabulary words that are bolded in blue. So like I mentioned before, students get an opportunity to be exposed to important vocabulary repeatedly throughout the article a day set. If there's a word that they're unfamiliar with that's in blue, they can click on it. You'll see the audio icon, meaning they can click on that to listen to the correct pronunciation. They can listen to the definition, example sentences. This also includes Spanish and Chinese translations and other word forms, so like other endings for that base word. And then when the vocabulary word is a noun, another cool feature is that there will also be an image included to help deepen their understanding of that vocabulary word. So students can type in what they learned. This is a really interesting passage about hedgehogs hibernating. And then they can submit their book of knowledge entry. So I just walked you through how a student can complete that book of knowledge entry, but I also just want to show you what it looks like once they've submitted a book of knowledge entry for a set. You'll see that that passage moves down to the bottom and it's labeled submitted. So now that student can move on and choose another article in this set. I'm going to log out of the student account so we can review.
So now that you've seen the student-facing version, I want to review the steps in Article a Day. So it is a 10-minute routine, and the first 3 steps, they can be done independently. So step 1, set the purpose for reading. Students should always know the reason why they are reading a text. Step 2, students read or listen to an article from a set of topically connected articles. Step 3, students complete their books of knowledge. And when we get to step 4, there's a little bit more flexibility around this step. It can be part of the daily routine, or it can take place at the end of the week once the students have read all 5 articles from that set. This is also a great way for students to summarize the information that they have learned over the week before they start on their new set for the upcoming week. But you definitely want students to share their knowledge. When students have the opportunity to share, that also gives you the opportunity as the educator to give them feedback. And we know that feedback is one of Marzano's strategies of yielding high results. So that is another way that you can impact student achievement. They can do this in a think, pair, share with a partner or in a group. They can do the jigsaw method. If you are unfamiliar with it, it is a cooperative learning strategy. I use jigsaw for everything. And the students are separated into home groups. And in each individual in that home group is assigned a specific item. And then they all gather into that same expert group that is speaking on that one item. Once they have concluded their conversations, they return to their home group. And now they are sharing what they know because they are now an expert on that topic. So that is another way that students can share out, and you can make that look differently. Maybe in the expert groups, they all have a different passage from the set, but you can make that look however you want. Jigsaw is also very flexible. And also remember that when we are talking about the ELA standard, students should be able to read about it, talk about it, and write about it. And so you have all 3 of those listed with the article a day. And we do recommend that you use it with fidelity to yield the best results. So this should last for 15 or more weeks. And there are 2 scoping sequences to make this easy for you. We know some people here, somebody started school yesterday. So hopefully you haven't quite started yet. Even if you have, you still have time to make sure that you can start off strong and go ahead and make sure you meet that fidelity goal. So how will this look in your normal routine? It sounds like I don't have another block of time throughout the day to do this, but you would be surprised where you can find these pockets of 10 minutes. So when you are starting out at the beginning of the year, I recommend modeling this for your students. We want to model everything so they know what the expectations are. And you can do this in a whole group. And while you are reading or playing the audio of the text, the students can stop and jot, or they can again think, pair, and share. And then you all can do the book of knowledge together. And so now you have an exemplar. So when you have students do it independently, they know what it should look like. You can also support your EL students or your low performance students, and they can share out verbally or even draw pictures. You can also do this as a bell ringer. If your school is doing dear time, drop everything and read. You can do this during your dear time. You can do this the last few minutes of the day before dismissal. Or if you are departmentalized and you all are switching classes, you can do this before you transition. If you have a very long dismissal process, like some of us, where you may start dismissal at 2:15, but maybe those after school students aren't really getting on their van until like 3 o'clock, then you can present them with article a day. This is something that is more structured. We know that when students do not have structure, that is when behavior problems happen. So even though those students are not in your home room, there's still a structured activity that will also impact their learning. And we're educators, so they're all our students anyway. And also when you are doing small groups, if you do decide to assign a specific passage each day for your students, then you have a 6 passage that you can use as a code read in your teacher-led group, or you could even pull it out, and so students still have the option to choose what day they want to read it, and that way you still have a code read available. I have also used it with MTSS once I received the results from the universal screener for those standards that the students were performing low on that required me to do a mini lesson, and maybe a text was not available. With the program that we were using for the universal screener, I was able to use one of the articles or the article set and article a day in order to do my interventions. So now Tamika will log in as a teacher to show you how to access article a day.
Thanks, Tamora. And thank you so much for providing so many just tangible examples of ways to fit article a day into your day. You know, the idea of adding another task can be so daunting, but thinking flexibly about those little pockets of time or how you can include it with other routines makes it feel more doable. So thank you. So I'm going to log in into my teacher account, and I wanted to point out how to locate the teacher guides. And so many of you indicated in the poll that you're not familiar with it. So on the top bar, on the right side between donate and alignments, you'll see teacher guide. And here we give a breakdown into the research behind all of our products, how we approach reading comprehension and improving reading comprehension. So we'll link our research and link to specific products and how to use the content and our activities effectively. So under using our content effectively, you'll see article a day here. And this is a really helpful resource where you learn more about article a day. We include video and other helpful links. This page is also linked on that resource page that I mentioned earlier. So on the bottom of the screen, the green button resources, you will also see a link to learn more about article a day. So we're presenting a lot of information here, and yet there's still even more information. So if you're curious and you'd like to learn more and see some more examples, I definitely recommend checking out the teacher guide. Okay, so now I'm going to go over to the content page. Returning users, you're familiar with this. This is probably the first page you go to when you log in, especially if you already know what you're looking for. So once you're in the content page, you can locate article a day by clicking on scope and sequences. Article a day, we have two scope and sequences. There's a topical for K to 8 and a vocabulary for 2 to 5. I'll be focusing on the vocabulary scope and sequence in tomorrow's live webinar where we discuss growing vocabulary. But today we'll focus on the topical scope and sequence for grades K to 8. As you can see, to support you in your fidelity goal, we have an entire school year mapped out for you from August to June. So whenever you're ready to start that routine, we make it super easy. You can even, I'm going to select a grade level. And from there, you can get the entire month's worth of article a day sets, and you can assign an entire month's worth of sets in just one quick click by clicking on assign, and then you just select all the different options. I do recommend using audio. It's a great way to support your below grade level readers, including those boost or challenge articles. That's another great way to differentiate. And you can choose, how students are interacting with it. Do you want them to read the same articles? Do you want them to have some choice? We know student choice is a really great way to get them engaged. So you have a lot of options there. I'm going to click on a specific week as well, just to show you how you can assign just a week. So again, you still have those options to include audio, boost and challenge articles. Meaning Mapper is connected to vocabulary. So again, if you're interested in how to grow vocabulary, there will be a webinar tomorrow where we focus on that. Another great feature is that you can choose between your whole class or specific students or a small group, right? So let's say you have a group of students, maybe they're reading below grade level, and you want them to build background knowledge in a specific area. When you're assigning, you can select those students, you can select the class if you have multiple. So there's a lot of flexibility there. If you're interested in printing it out, you can actually generate a printable PDF. This is actually how I used this product. I would print out the set, and I liked the check boxes in the front. After you read it, you can check it off in the front. I can look through folders really quickly and see. And there's lots of space for students to jot down their book of knowledge entries, like what they've learned. They can write it directly on on the handout as well. So if you're not using the digital format, you can also do that as well. Something else that I'd like to draw your attention to, because while we do have a fidelity goal, we also understand, maybe you're trying to be intentional about ways to build background knowledge when you're using a curriculum that doesn't include that, right? So we know that there are programs out there that maybe don't allow you to build that background knowledge, and you're trying to find ways to support your readers and give them an entry point into what it is that they're reading. You can also use the search bar and the filters to locate specific article a day sets that are related to what you're teaching. So on the content page, you can go to the first part of the filter on the left, content type, and select article a day sets. And in the search bar, you can go ahead and type in a topic and, pull up relevant article a day sets. So if you're really trying to find ways to make that routine work, or maybe you can't consistently, meet that fidelity goal, but you still want to give your students an opportunity to build that background knowledge, this is another great way to do it. So let's see, let's say you want to teach your students about squirrels. Here we see various grade levels. I'll select third grade. And here we have two sets that pop up. So maybe students would be reading about a squirrel and you're like, I want to build background knowledge on this, and they don't know enough about this, and I want to, now you can give them an entry point. So if you're not able to follow the scope and sequence perfectly, you can still locate relevant article a day sets. Also, if you have a moment, I would love to know what ELA curriculum you are using in your school. So if you have a moment in the chat, please tell us, share with us, which programs are you using? All right, moving along, I do want to share with you CKLA. Thank you for sharing, Jessica. I do want to tell you a little bit about a case study that was done with an educator, Mr. Haskey in New Mexico. This was in September 2021 to May 2022. Mr. Haskey teaches at a K-6 tribally controlled school with over 90% of the student population being connected to the Navajo tribe. And Mr. Haskey had a few goals for students that year: to increase their motivation to read, to increase reading fluency, and to supplement the standard curriculum materials. And the findings from this case study was that Mr. Haskey saw increased student engagement, increased reading and writing, and improved standardized test scores. There is a link at the resources page that's linked below where you can learn more about this case study on Article a Day. But now we will shift gears and tell you about another background knowledge building product.
So I'm going to talk about the ReadWorks book studies. And one thing that both Tamika and Tamora said was more connections equals more knowledge. And that really stuck with me, especially with my students. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the book studies. I use them religiously in now that I went from classroom teacher to library media specialist. I love to use novels with my students, and with ReadWorks having this extra supplement in, it makes my job even better, and my students really enjoy it. So what are the book studies? Based on research-backed article a day routine, it helps build background knowledge. This involves your vocabulary. This allows your class discussions. All that is included. Each text set is considered a book study. Typically, there's about 3 book studies per book, and then in each of those book studies there's about 7 related passages. So if you decide to do all 3 book studies with your novel, you're looking at least 21 extra passages, extra connections that your students can use. And I'll share here in a few minutes one that I use with my students, my 6th grade students. ReadWorks has text-dependent question sets that provide carefully scaffolded practice in activating prior knowledge about text text structure, inferencing, monitoring and clarifying and questioning. This helps engage our readers with text and dig deeply into what they're reading. Early research shows that students benefit from regularly doing the ReadWorks question sets, as their multiple choice question correct rate increases as they do more of these. Usually the ReadWorks questions follow a specific template. You're going to see questions about explicit information. You're going to see text structure. You're going to see conclusions, evidence. You're going to see inferencing questions, and you're going to see main and central idea types of questions that they will see in further, summative assessments and even formative ones, but summative ones that they're going to see in state and national assessments. While the number ranges per book study, there's about 7 per book study. Teachers can handpick these. They're adaptable. How you want to use them, customizable to your student needs and for the teacher needs. And early pilots have said that the passage a day is a good cadence, and that the multiple book studies for each book give you enough reading for the whole unit. So, continuing on, there are 3 types of text sets or book studies. And again, there are fiction and nonfiction passages. My students love fiction, but they sometimes don't like nonfiction as much. So I struggle with sometimes finding things that they can connect to. Each book, and you may want to make note of this, each book has a deeper dive text set. While some of the novels have all 3 types, or maybe 2 of the knowledge theme sets, there will always be a deeper dive. For more information on the development of the book study, you can take a look at the blog that is linked in the resource screen button at the bottom of your screen. I'm going to share with you real quickly. My students usually in the spring read The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan, Percy Jackson. And I'm not a big Greek mythological fan. I had it in high school, college, and it just didn't do anything for me. But I saw a couple of years ago that ReadWorks had the book study, and I said, well, I'm gonna try this book, and my kids loved it. I was really surprised. The boys really picked up on it, and surprisingly, the girls loved it too. And I would always have these students that would say, well, Mr. West, tell me a bit more about Cyclops or Poseidon, and I wouldn't know anything. But what's great about this resource is I could pull these articles that help supplement it and help create those deeper connections. And one thing that, I've always found is students enjoy the novels, and they love participating in class discussions. And the good thing about this book, I can say in particular, is there's a lot of real world issues that not only are the characters in the book facing, but our students are facing in real life. Learning disabilities, low income families, absent parents, bullying, friendship, just a lot of themes that they can connect from their own personal experience with the story. And that makes them enjoy and, internalize the book a lot more. There's great resources, like we said, and I'll share this real quick. My students usually in the fall visit a pumpkin patch that's probably about 30 minutes to an hour away from our school. And believe it or not, a lot of our students don't, some of them don't have the opportunity to go on these trips outside of school. So with funding and all that, it makes it a great adventure for them. There was a passage that was about, it was called Trading Pumpkins. It was a realistic fiction story. So when we would talk about that in coordinates with the book, they were like, hey, we went to the pumpkin, so it was just really cool for them to make that connection and how they could connect to the characters as well. So
thank you so much, Wesley. I'm going to briefly touch on the book studies routine. And just a reminder, a link to the slides are accessible by clicking on the green resources button. So there's up to 5 steps involved. Step one, you just set the purpose for the routine, just really quickly, getting kids excited about the routine. Step two, students can read or listen to the passages. So there's that option to include audio. Step three, students monitor their comprehension with a text-dependent question set. And there's flexibility in whether or not you want to use a full question set with up to 10 questions or an express question set, so 5 quick multiple choice. Step four is optional, so students can also write in their books of knowledge. So it's a little bit different than article a day. And then finally, step five, students can discuss connections between the passage and the book that they're reading.
So here's just a sample lesson with Charlotte's Web. Perhaps you'd like to lead a class discussion on the development of Wilbur and Charlotte's friendship, talking about character traits that both characters share. Wilbur's a little apprehensive at first after he sees Charlotte eating bugs, and he doubts, that she can be a good friend to him. However, their friendship, begins to blossom as the book continues, and she proves to be a supportive friend to Wilbur. Here's an example of some of the learning objectives and guiding questions to help support your class. Again, this could be tied in with the friendship and sacrifice theme in the ReadWorks book study that's shown there on the screen. And now Tamika is going to show you how to book study in her demo.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I will go back to the website. You'll notice that I am looking over just at my other screen, but I'm still here with you. All right. I'm just clearing out my filters. All right. So once you get to the content page, you can use the content type filter to select book studies. And then you can select from the drop-down menu. And here you see all of I'm noticing on the screen, I don't think you can see the options in the drop-down menu. Well, there are a lot of options. So you can even just select that all books button. And I'm gonna go to Charlotte's Web. So here we see that this text has all 3 book studies. So let's say, you want to have a discussion around friendship using the example that Wesley was talking about. You can select this set of book studies. You click on Assign. And this is where you have the option to really hand pick the most relevant passages that are going to support your discussions. Always recommend including audio. You can include those express questions. You can include vocabulary activities. It depends, what your needs are. And you can also deselect any passages that, won't work for the lesson that you're using. Another great feature. All right. So another great feature is you can also select students and groups. Let's say you have small groups. You can also just assign book studies to small groups. And this is where it gets really customizable, because now you can also choose different due dates and start dates and due dates for each assignment. So let's say you want your students to log into their accounts every day for the week, but every time they log in, you want them to see a new passage in that book study. So you can customize by saying, answering no to that question. And then you go through each passage and you can adjust the start date. And that's going to automatically push the due date back as well. So you can line it up so that each day when students log in, they're going to see a new passage from that book study. They'll also have the question sets. You can include the full or express. Here you can print, meaning generating a printable PDF. for students that include all of the passages and the related question sets. So I'm going to log out of the teacher account, but log back in as a student so you can see what your students will see. So we just took an entire book study and we customized it so that your students should only see one a day. So now they see the first passage from that book study. It's also highlighted book study. So instead of seeing all 7 texts, this student's seeing that first passage that you want them to see. Because we included audio, that student can listen to the text. They can adjust the speed. The same accessibility features that I showed earlier, including that split screen. So now students can listen, they can read, and answer the questions. They can refer to the text to support them. All right. And we've also included a sample pacing guide. Wesley?
Yeah, just real briefly, we kind of discussed last time, Tamika and I did, about just sort of like a little pacing guide. And again, this is just something that you as the instructor can adapt best to your needs and your students' needs especially. But we just took a book study, the Greek mythology one and the Lightning Thief, and we kind of listed our days out through the week. You know, obviously you're probably not going to get through 3 chapters in one day, but at your own pace, you can see which book study passage would correspond with that part in the book. So that way students can kind of see it at both ways and then have an extra access to a complementing article that will help them with that connection. So,
and I think it's also a great example of how you can have 7 texts, but again, you can choose which ones feel the most relevant. So Wesley chose 5 here, right? So you can choose as many as you need to and really customize it. As we approach the end of this webinar, I wanted to just capture everything that we spoke about. We presented a lot of information to you. We told you about 2 different products. I think this slide sums up which needs are being met by which products. So Article a Day and book studies, they're both designed to build background knowledge and enhance vocabulary. All of the texts in the Article a Day sets are nonfiction. Most of the texts in book studies are nonfiction. Both products can supplement any ELA curriculum. For Article a Day, we provide a scope and sequence for the entire school year. We recommend daily use with Article a Day. It's a 10-minute routine, and there's a book of knowledge component to allow students to practice writing. With book studies, it's customizable. You can choose up to all 7 passages in each book study. The book of knowledge component with book studies is optional. And with book studies, we include text-dependent question sets. Article a Day doesn't come with a question set, right? We just want students to summarize what they've learned. You can get creative with how they do that. But with book studies, you can give students text-dependent question sets that are going to strengthen their strategic reading. A friendly reminder that these slides are available at the green button below, so you can take more time to review the information that we've presented. That brings us to the end of our session, so we will answer some questions. Our moderator, Becca, has been doing a phenomenal job answering questions throughout. Okay. Here's a question. This is a question for older students. Can they receive reminders about their assignments by email, or will they only receive reminders once they're logged into ReadWorks? That's a really great question. Thank you. They will receive the reminders as they log into their account. So just encouraging them to log in. If it's daily, just getting them to do that. And then they'll see, depending on how you assign passages to them, they'll see what needs to be done, and they'll be reminded of the due date. You can also adjust the due dates for them if need be. This question here, am I able to insert sentence starters in the Book of Knowledge response box? That's a really great question. So when students are assigned article a day, the Book of Knowledge entry has an automatic sentence starter for them. So they just fill in the blank, right? I learned that. I also learned that. So it's included. Awesome. All right, my email address is on the screen, tamika@readworks.org. Please be sure to reach out if you do have a question after this that did not get answered. Okay, I see some more questions. I'm a virtual educator and don't see my students daily, and I'm struggling with daily discussions. Do they need to be teacher-led, or would a Padlet discussion be beneficial? This is a really great question. Tamora, I'm going to ask you, since you have very creative ways of using article a day and really getting students, like meeting them where they are, what would you say?
Yeah, depending on the program that you are using, you could have your students go into a breakout room, and that way you can hop into each room and hear their discussions. And maybe they'll talk a little bit more since they're not in front of the mass of students. And then I would just have some expectations before they go to the breakout room. What are they to discuss? Make sure they choose a speaker, and that way, when you bring them back to the whole group, that you have that speaker who is sharing out what they discuss. Padlet is also great. It's a good way for them to write. So you could even, I wouldn't say either or. Like I mentioned before, if they are discussing it, then they could have a follow-up where they actually write it. And so you could still use Padlet or any other program, and then they can write about what they discuss in those breakout rooms.
Thank you so much. Okay, do you need to have paid version to access book studies or article a day? Everything's free, all free. I appreciate this question. There are no paywalls. It's completely free. Is there a specific webinar for parents to use at home? This is a really great question, and something that I've been thinking about doing towards the end of the school year. But if you are an educator who is using ReadWorks and you want to tell families about ReadWorks, I would say the best webinar to introduce them to it would be all about ReadWorks. It covers all the products, all the different features. I think that's a great place to start. All right. So my email address is on the screen. Please reach out if you have any additional questions, tamika@readworks.org. Please be on the lookout for a follow-up email. I always send that email within 10 to 15 minutes after the webinar. So if you don't see that email with the link to the recording and your PD certificate, please check your spam folder. Sometimes emails from Crowdcast get sent straight to spam, but the email does get sent out. And if at any point you don't see that email, the green button below has all of the information that I would have included in the emails, including a copy of your certificate. Okay. All right, I see one more question here. So while we are based in the US, we do have many international users, and from what I know, we are accessible all over. Thank you so much for using ReadWorks. Okay. This question about webinars focused on teachers, I'd recommend checking out readworks.org/webinars. You'll see the full calendar. And when you click on the links in that calendar, you'll see descriptions of the webinar. So you can decide what's best for you. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. McConnell. Thank you, Dr. Ruth. Thank you for joining us today. Take care.